Alien invasions might sound like the stuff of sci-fi movies like War of the Worlds, but the reality is even more alarming. Our planet is constantly under threat from the very creatures that share it with us. From ocean-dwelling invaders to colossal, dangerous predators, here are 10 species perfectly positioned to take over the world. Number 10. Man-eating super snake. Florida is already home to some pretty wacky stuff, but man-eating snakes really shouldn't be one of them. The Burmese python was a native snake in Southeast Asia, which mainly preyed on birds and mammals until it started turning up in the Floridian Everglades during the 1980s and spread quickly. Failed attempts to combat the alien python invasion have even included sending two renowned snake charmers from an Indian mountain tribe to chant their way through the Everglades. In 2017, bagging just 31 snakes in 2 months. It's generally believed that the snakes were originally released as unwanted pets, and they have been terrorizing local wildlife ever since. But the terror is far from over. Another deadly snake, the African rock python, which is bigger, hungrier, and far more aggressive than its Burmese relation, has also recently been spotted in an area of West Miami. Authorities are now fearing that if the rock python is able to spread into the Everglades and breed with the Burmese python, humanity could be about to witness the birth of a hybrid behemoth, man-eating snake like no other. A snake of this size, strength, and ferocity could be totally unmanaged, decimating local wildlife and toppling the entire food chain to assert its dominance in the Florida area. And who knows where it might venture after that. Number 9. Fire-starting ants. Those of you who have already heard of fire ants know those tiny red ants whose bite can burn like the heat of 1,000 fires. Well, be prepared, because this specific strain of fire ants lives up to its name in an unusually deadly way. The UK can't seem to catch a break when it comes to unusual creature invasions, because these tiny terrors were first discovered in 2009 at Hidcote Manor Gardens, a National Trust property in Gloucestershire. A colony of 35,000 ants required removal from the property, but the most bizarre part of this unexpected discovery was that the creatures were found inside the fuse box. Yes, all those minuscule brown dots are ants. The ants, officially named Lasius neglectus by experts, have a mysterious attraction to electricity, which could be fatal for us humans as the colony gathers inside plug sockets and power sources in houses and buildings. Infestations, if left undiscovered, could pose a huge fire risk. These fire-starting ants have already caused major blackouts across the UK and are estimated to cost around £1.7 billion every year in damage and management alone. If you come across one of these little guys at home, you better have the fire brigade on standby. Number 8. Poison-immune super rats. Sounds pretty terrifying, right? Believe it or not, these revolting rodents don't just get their name from snooping around the bins and squeaking a bit. In 2014, rat catchers in Liverpool were reporting sightings of rats the size of small cats, unlike anything they'd ever seen before. And the staggering annual rise in rodent-related callouts ever since has indicated the start of a war against the super rat. These giant rodents have been gorging themselves on increased food waste in towns and cities and growing to previously unheard-of sizes. That's not the scariest thing about these creatures, though. Researchers attempting to understand the outbreak soon discovered that the huge rats had also evolved to become immune to current forms of pesticide control. This genetic mutation, officially named L120Q, has forced rat catchers to demand permission to develop and use much stronger toxins to kill the rodents. During the 1960s and 70s, the poison was based on a blood-thinning drug called warfarin, which was an effective rat killer. But now, the health and safety executive is under pressure to approve a third-generation toxin. If the government agency doesn't act fast, all regular rats susceptible to the current poison will eventually be wiped out, leaving only the horrifying strain of poison-immune super rat, and no one wants to live in that dystopia. Number 7. Formosan super termites. Sometimes the smallest creatures can pose the biggest threats and the Formosan super termite is no exception. This winged foreign termite species has been invading homes across several U.S. states in swarms of millions, and their small size and relatively low risk to humans should not be underestimated. While the Floridian man-eating python is thankfully still only a dangerous possibility, the super termite is living proof that the accidental interbreeding of two species can be truly disastrous. The typical mating seasons of the East Asian and Formosan termites, which had coexisted for thousands of years, began to overlap as climate change made winter months warmer. The hybrid super termite strain was born with a voracious appetite. The colony can spread out over an acre of soil at any one time in search of food and can consume up to 13 ounces of wood per day, taking down entire wooden structures in a matter of months. Pest specialists are unequipped to deal with such alarming rates of destruction, and the widespread invasion of these alien insectoids is estimated to be a high risk for the next 20 years. The super termite has already been discovered in California, Hawaii, Alabama, Mississippi, and you guessed it, Florida, and your hometown could be next. Number 6. Cane toads. Human intervention in nature rarely ends well. In the case of the Australian cane toad invasion, it should act as a prime example of exactly what not to do in the future. During the early 20th century, crops were suffering so badly at the hands of the destructive sugarcane beetle that in 1935, Australian authorities decided to introduce the South American cane toad to control the ravaging insect problem. Unfortunately, these toxic toads, weighing over 4 pounds and measuring up to 23 centimeters in length, started multiplying rapidly, spreading through local habitats and forcing native wildlife into a significant decline. The high toxicity levels in their skin made them virtually invincible to large predators who may have otherwise controlled their spread, and the temptation to consume these slimy invaders proved fatal to any species of mammals, marsupials, birds, and even saltwater crocodiles who might still risk a bite. Various measures proposed to curb this unstoppable takeover, such as releasing a controlled virus to kill the toads, have often hit a roadblock when conservationists realized they also pose a threat to other wildlife. And the worst part, there's no real evidence to support the fact that the toads have contributed to a decline in the sugarcane beetle population at all. Number 5. The Emu War. The cane toad invasion is not to be taken lightly, but Australia's emu problem became so bad in 1932 that the government actually declared war on the massive flightless birds. After World War I, a number of Australian and British Army veterans took to farming in Western Australia, but their wheat fields came under siege when around 20,000 emus migrated to the farmlands to breed. The birds destroyed fences to gain access to the land, which only added insult to injury as rabbits then began to wreak havoc on the crops. Eventually, these ex-military farmers approached the Ministry of Defense to provide a definite solution, and miraculously, a military troop equipped with machine guns were deployed to deal with the situation. It sounds simple enough, but on their first attempt on November 2nd, the birds outsmarted the men by scattering, and only around 50 were killed despite 2,500 rounds of ammo being fired. A tactical change was ordered on November 4th to ambush and kill the birds at close range, but after a handful of successful shots, the machine gun jammed, calling a halt to the approach. Even mounting the weapon on a military truck proved unsuccessful, as emus can run at over 30 miles per hour and their zigzagging movements were far superior to the vehicle on rough terrain. After a momentary regroup, a second phase was able to kill a few hundred birds until, on November 10th, the Army admitted defeat and withdrew out of pressure from conservationists and, well, sheer embarrassment. Number 4. Crown of Thorns Starfish. This marine invader truly looks like something sent from another planet. With 21 arms covered in razor-sharp venomous spines, the crown of thorns starfish poses a very serious threat to underwater ecosystems. Unlike the introduction of cane toads or Floridian pythons, baffled researchers believe that nutrients from farming fertilizer making their way into the ocean are to blame for an increased survival rate of starfish larvae, allowing numbers to boom. This predatory starfish has an unusually voracious appetite for coral flesh, and each adult in a herd can chomp through 10 square meters of precious reef tissue per year, leaving only destruction in its wake. Such alarming figures have led scientists to propose that the crown-of-thorns starfish could be a greater threat to the Great Barrier Reef than global warming, as the invaders tear through the landscape, leaving it barren. Thus, ecological Armageddon will only worsen as each female starfish lays between 5 and 20 million eggs, and while various methods like injecting these reef killers with lethal toxins are being considered, a permanent solution is needed fast. Number 3. European pigeon-eating catfish. Yeah, you heard that correctly. This is an aquatic invader so adapted to its alien aquatic invaders so we catch a neat airborne prey. This unusual hunter, otherwise known as the Wells catfish, was first released in the River Tarn in France in 1983, where it has flourished, asserting strong dominance as one of the river's fiercest predators. Growing up to 10 feet in length, these river monsters have learned to mimic the hunting behavior of killer whales as they launch themselves ashore and snack on any knave pigeons that reach. Don't believe me? Take a look for yourself. Although attempts aren't always successful, these freshwater invaders are persistent, with one fisherman claiming to have filmed 54 separate attacks from one bridge during the summer of 2011. This astounding behavioral strategy is actually pretty concerning, as reports of the creatures in Germany and beyond suggest that this killer catfish could soon replace native fish species around the world. They could be a solution to annoying pigeon infestations, though. Number 2. Killer bees. Attack of the Killer Bees might sound like a low-rent horror movie, but it now seems that this nightmare has come to life. It turns out the Formosan super termite isn't the only monster insect accidentally created by us meddling humans, and this time we may have produced something far worse, a highly aggressive strain of bee, which can literally be called the killer. The story goes that in the 1950s, African honeybees were imported to Brazil where they could be safely bred with European honeybees to create a species maximized for honey production. Only it all went horribly wrong. In 1957, 26 of these new Africanized hybrid queens and their colonies escaped from the experimental apiary 100 miles from Sao Paulo and have since been spreading at a rate of 100 to 200 miles per year. Fleeing the nest in huge swarms, these bees will chase a human for a quarter of a mile and have already killed around 1,000 people, stinging their victims 10 times more than regular European honeybees. So if you stumble upon a nest of killer bees, it's likely you'll end up like this guy in no time. Number 1. Jellyfish invasion. Jellyfish are among the oldest and most mysterious creatures on Earth. Despite lacking brains, eyes, bones, or blood, these fascinating animals have thrived for over 500 million years. Now, they're on the brink of a global takeover. Their populations are surging due to climate change, as warming oceans become more hospitable to them. As pollution increases and other marine life struggles to survive, jellyfish continue to flourish thanks to their remarkable ability to live in low-oxygen environments. In January 2019, a massive invasion of bluebottle jellyfish descended on Queensland, Australia, forcing the closure of several popular beaches after a record 13,000 stings were reported. These dangerous invaders have far-reaching consequences, too. For example, in 2011, swarms of jellyfish caused the shutdown of the Torness nuclear reactor in Scotland, and in 2013, they did the same at the Oskarshamn nuclear plant in Sweden. Japan has also been grappling with a jellyfish crisis over the past decade, as the colossal Nomura jellyfish wreaks havoc on fishing communities, overwhelming them with their sheer numbers. In the fall of 2009, these giants even capsized a 10-ton fishing boat as its crew struggled to haul in a net teeming with them. It seems the most dangerous invaders often come from the most unexpected places. Alien invaders might be lurking all around us. Which of these creatures do you think poses the greatest threat? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.